It's a beautiful day in the studio, a beautiful day for a subscriber. Won't you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a stoodly day in this beauty, oh, a subscribably day for a beauty. Won't you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted a subscriber, just like you. Always wanted to have a channel with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my subscriber? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my subscriber? Okay, so if you were ever wondering why I never started a music channel, well, now you know. Now, a couple of things I want to say. First, I know a few of you might be concerned, thinking to yourself, oh, well, he must have extreme nostalgia for Mr. Rogers, so no matter what, he's going to love the movie. Well, don't worry. Believe it or not, I have zero nostalgia for the TV show whatsoever. So I'll be able to look at this movie as its own standalone movie. I'll be able to see if it can stand on its own 2 feet, at least from my philosophical point of view. Now, the other thing I want to say is that I know this movie's based off of a true story, but I think we all know, especially after my last video, I'll leave it down in the description below, movies have a tendency to stretch things. Sometimes they'll even replace things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, even from an entertainment standpoint. So I'm not really going to be looking to see how accurately this movie depicts the actual events. What I'm going to be doing is looking at it solely as its own movie and solely how, as a movie, it depicts its philosophical principles, just like I did with Whiplash. Now, for this video, there are probably going to be a couple of spoilers. I don't think anything major, though. That being said, you're probably not going to be able to follow along with what I'm saying very well if you haven't seen the movie, because quite obviously, I'm going to be referencing the movie quite a bit. So with all that said, what are my philosophical thoughts of Mr. Rogers? Well, to put it simply, it takes a very basic yet true concept and depicts it in a very simple yet complicated fashion. And yes, I'm aware that I sound like one of those art snobs intentionally making it confusing just to make himself sound smarter, but just please stay with me. I will explain what it is I'm talking about. See, the basic concept I'm talking about is that simply being kind can have a tremendous effect. Now, if you've seen the movie, which again you kind of have to if you want to follow along here, I want you to think to yourself, what exactly did Mr. Rogers do? Not what did we learn about Mr. Rogers, not what happened in the entirety of the movie. Specifically, I want you to think about what did Mr. Rogers physically do? And if you think about it, he really didn't do much of anything. Most of the time we've seen him on screen, he's really just sitting and talking. Sometimes maybe he's standing, but that's about it. Yet, if you've seen the movie, you know good and well, he is the driving force behind the entirety of the movie. You know that somehow he managed to have the biggest possible positive impact on a person in one of the worst situations you can think of, and he's barely even related to that person. And I don't mean genetically speaking, I mean contextually. He has almost no relationship to Mr. Rogers. Yet, again, Mr. Rogers is still able to have the biggest positive impact possible. So how does this happen? How is it that a man who really doesn't do that much, and if you think about it, a good 55 to 60% of the movie he's not actually in, he's still able to have this kind of an impact? It is simply because he is a genuinely nice person. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the movie's trying to make him out to be like this super mega saint. In fact, one thing I've noticed is that not in the movie, but in like actual life, people do have a tendency to hold him up on this really high pedestal of like ultimate niceness, and that he's never gone angry or has no personality flaws to him whatsoever. And the movie actually addresses this, because the movie makes it clear that that's how people see him. But when you learn about him, you realize he's just a regular dude. He gets upset sometimes, he gets angry sometimes, he gets sad sometimes. People might not think that from watching him on his TV show, but he does, because he's a regular human being. So the movie makes it very clear that being genuinely nice does not mean being this perfect human being, because frankly, that's impossible. That's not going to happen. In fact, there's a scene in the movie where he's asked about when he gets angry or sad, and he responds, well, yeah, everybody gets angry or sad, but we can still do things to alleviate that without hurting anybody else or ourselves. And one of the things he says that you can do is like slam the keys at the lower end of the piano. And if you stayed until the end of the movie, you saw that Mr. Rogers slammed the keys at the lower end of the piano because he was upset about something. And what that was meant to demonstrate was that, yeah, the dude gets upset. It's human. But being genuinely nice, what it actually means to be genuinely nice, not, again, this high pedestal that we have, but like a legitimate person, just being that can mean the world to somebody. And the movie demonstrates that even the most subtle of things can have the largest impact. In fact, you see several times throughout the movie, pretty much when they're in public, people will just walk up to Mr. Rogers and they'll walk away happier or better or more fulfilled. And Mr. Rogers didn't do much. It's not like he went out, got a psychologist, gave him psychological help. It's not like he gave him anything. All he did was just have a conversation with these random people. And those few little moments for minutes that they got to spend with Mr. Rogers, where he really didn't do much other than talk to him, that just made the day of whoever talked to him, because it's just such a little subtle thing, but it could have the greatest impact. So the movie, again, I keep repeating this because it's just the point of the movie. The movie very subtly shows you that you really can have this large impact with just showing this kindness in the simplest of moments. And when you're watching the movie, you kind of have to follow along, because to be honest with you, when I started the movie, I thought it was going to be bad. Like within like the first 15 20 minutes of the movie or so, I'm like, where is this going? Like, what's happening here? But you keep going, and it makes you think. It doesn't shove anything in your face. It's not like, here's the lesson, take it. No, you have to sit there and progressively observe. And I don't mean that like you have to sit there solving a puzzle, but you kind of have to sit there and ponder it as you're going through. In fact, I knew I was going to make a video about this movie, but I wasn't going to do it immediately because I needed time to think about the extreme subtlety of the movie, which is why I said at the beginning that it's such a simple thing, but it also does it so beautifully complicated in its subtlety. It makes it so that it's almost like a very passive absorption of this super simple lesson. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to stop a war by going up to the general and going, pretty please, or at least not in most cases. But when we're talking about your day-to-day life, when we're talking about when you're on the bus or the school or wherever, and obviously that's not happening a whole lot right now for obvious reasons, it can still mean such a big difference. And you know what? Just because we're not physically out there doesn't mean that this kindness thing doesn't have an impact. In fact, this might be when this kindness thing has the biggest impact possible. I mean, I think we can all agree 2020 has not gone ideally, to say the least. In fact, I just saw the other day that the king of Wakanda himself had passed away. I mean, come on. And, oddly enough, I'm mentioning him in this video, and I also mentioned him in my first philosophical review of a movie. I'll leave that in the description below as well. But yeah, things have not been going ideally. But that's all the more reason that we have to be kind to each other, because it can mean that difference. It can cause that kind of an impact. And I don't know if I've repeated myself to the point where most of you have logged off already. I would not blame you. I think I went a little ranty in this video. But you get my point here. I just can't get over it. The subtlety in this movie just beautifully portrays this lesson. It's like an elegant brushstroke. Now look, again, I don't know if the actual Mr. Rogers was anything like what he was portrayed in the movie. I would like to think so. I would hope that he was, but I obviously can't tell you. But again, I'm talking about this movie as its own movie, and this is the lesson I believe that the movie tries to give you. And I honestly really like it because of that. And again, I started out kind of hating it. I thought it was really boring. But you keep watching it, and you give yourself just the chance to sit, enjoy, and ponder afterwards. You can see the elegance in how it presented this lesson. Well, guys, that marks the end of the video. But before you leave, I would like to end with this. It's such a good feeling to know you've subscribed. It's such a happy feeling to know you have watched. And when you wake up, ready to say, I think I'll send out these videos. It's such a good feeling. A very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the mic is fresh and I'll have more video for you, and you'll have things you want to comment about, and I will too. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said in the song, make sure to leave any suggestions. Maybe you have other ideas or movies you'd like me to philosophically review. Make sure to leave that down in the comment section below. Otherwise, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell button. I post every other week, so until then, hear nothing and listen to all. Bye, guys.